to Tutoratti. Kids, I hope you enjoyed our video about life processes. So with all those response, thanks to you all, bacha, we are now starting with your next chapter. Very important chapter from the exam point of view. As you can rightly see, we are now going to deal with your 8th chapter, bacha, that is how do organisms reproduce. Yes, needless to say, it's a very interesting chapter, lots of new concepts to learn about. So without wasting any further time, let's just start with how do organisms reproduce. Kids, I will tell you how do organisms reproduce, but उसके पहले हम discuss करने वाले हैं why do organisms reproduce. Yes, ma'am, why do we have to discuss these things? Kids, see, in your chapter of life processes हमने देखा है nutrition, excretion, transportation, everything are considered as a life processes. क्यों? अगर इसमें से कोई भी process hamper हुई तो हमारा maintenance and sustenance is going to be disturbed. Come on, yes or no? Yes, बच्चा. You would like to know that reproduction is also considered as a life process. क्यों ऐसा? Why is it considered as a life process? जबकि वो मेंटेनेंस और सस्टेनेंस के लिए ज़रूरत नहीं है. मैम, वी डिडंट अंडरस्टैंड. किड्स, अंडरस्टैंड, अगर वन पर्सन फेल्स टू हैव एक्सक्रीशन और परफॉर्म न्यूट्रिशन और रेस्पिरेशन, द पर्सन विल नॉट सर्वाइव. बट इफ द सेम पर्सन फेल्स टू रिप्रोड्यूस, the survival is going to be unaffected. अगर survival का scope नहीं है और there is no question of survival over here, then why is it considered as a life process? That is what we are going to discuss now. After all, as I told you, reproduction is not necessary. See the words over here. ज़रूरत नहीं है for maintenance of a life of an इंडिविजुअल ऑर्गेनिज्म, किसी एक इंसान के लिए. जैसे कि बाकी है, न्यूट्रिशन है, रेस्पिरेशन है, एक्सक्रीशन है. ऑल्सो किड्स, अगर एक इंसान रिप्रोड्यूस करता है, ही और शी इज गोइंग टू स्पेंड अ लॉट ऑफ एनर्जी इन दैट प्रोसेस. Also, if an individual organism is going to create more individual, a lot of its energy is spent in the process. So why? Again that question. Why should an individual organism waste energy on the process which is not at all necessary to need or stay alive? Well, bacha, the answer is to maintain the species. Absolutely correct. By now you all must have got the idea of it. It is obvious that we notice organisms because they reproduce. आपको बाहर जाते ही cats दिख जाते हैं, dogs दिख जाते हैं, trees दिख जाते हैं, crows दिख जाते हैं, because they are in large number present. How are they present in large numbers? Because their individuals kept on reproducing. If there were to be only one और वो भी non-reproducing member रहा, एक ही मेंबर है और वो भी रिप्रोड्यूस नहीं कर रहा है बच्चा, it will be doubtful that we would have noticed its existence. नहीं पता चलता हमको उनका existence. It is the large number of organisms belonging to a single species that bring them to our notice. Yes, so they organisms have to be in large number ताकि हम उनको notice कर सके, so that उनकी species exist कर सके. How do we know that? Two different individual organisms belong to the same species. मैम, बहुत बेसिक आंसर है इसका. एक जैसे दिखते हैं, absolutely correct. We say that because, how are you going to say these both belong to the same species? They look so similar to each other. Yes, because they look similar to each other. Thus, reproducing organisms make or create new individuals that look very much like themselves. Do organisms create the exact copies of themselves? This is the question that we are going to discuss now. Do organisms create exact copies of themselves? So we were discussing, do organisms create the exact copy of themselves, and the answer to this question is in the topic of DNA copying. Chalo bacha, let's see. In the last module, we arrived through whether organisms create the exact copies of themselves. Let us find out the answer for the same. Kids, what is reproduction? It is nothing but when an organism creates or makes a new individual that looks very much like themselves. A cat ka kitty is going to look like the cat itself. Dog ka puppy dekh lo, humans ka baby dekh lo, elephant का baby elephant देख लो, हमेशा वो एक दूसरे के जैसे, they look like themselves. When we say organisms look similar, मतलब क्या? Their body design is going to be similar. Human का baby अगर आप देखो, it is going to have the same pattern of eyes, the nose, the ears, the mouth, hands, legs. Body design काफ़ी similar होती है, which means their blueprints have to be similar. And reproduction is nothing but copying of those blueprints. Yes. So let us understand better. There is a female parent and a male parent. Their reproducing cell come close. They combine with each other. Now kids, we know that cell के अंदर होता है nucleus. Nucleus के अंदर होता है chromosomes. Chromosomes are made up of which are DNA. Absolutely correct. Chromosomes are made up of DNA. Chemical reaction, certain types of chemical reaction takes place over here, and thus the copies of DNAs are produced. Now kids, understand this. This DNA gets copied to the next cell. Absolutely correct. The DNAs get copies to the next cell. ये स्टेप की वजह से ना वेरिएशंस क्रिएट होते हैं. वेरिएशंस इज नथिंग बट वैरायटी. होटल में आप देखते हो वैरायटी ऑफ डिश होती है, सब अलग अलग, राइट? एग्जैक्टली. सो बिकॉज ऑफ दिस वेरिएशंस आर क्रिएटेड, वैरायटी इज क्रिएटेड. सो प्लीज नो दैट बच्चा, वी नेवर यूज द वर्ड identical. Okay, we never use the word identical, we use the word similar. Yes, they look very similar to themselves. When one organism creates or makes a new individual, they are going to have similar features, bacha. Identical nahi, similars. So this is your answers to DNA copying. Let us now learn the importance of variation. Variation is nothing but varieties which are created in a species. Population of an organism live in a well-defined places and that is called as niche. अब बच्चा according to the niches उनका body design भी वैसे ही होता है. Their body design allow them to use that particular niche. Say for instance, this is a polar bear. Polar bear is well adapted to its Arctic environment as their white fur helps them to blend in with the snow and ice, and also kids, they have a nice layer of fat under their skin which is going to help them to stay warm. However kids, these niches can change because the reasons are going to be beyond the control of an organism. ज़रूरी नहीं है हमेशा the environment and their habitat is going to remain the same. Due to other environmental reasons, वो change हो सकते हैं. For instance, the temperature could go up and down, the water level may vary जिससे aquatic organisms affect होते हैं. Also, meteorite could get hit. Because of all these kids, if this is drastically happening, the population might be wiped out. You all must have heard of this organism. कैसे डे बाय डे उनका पॉपुलेशन अफेक्ट हो रहा है बिकॉज ऑफ द चेंजेस विच आर आउट ऑफ देयर कंट्रोल. However kids, if we bring about some variation, population can survive. कैसे? Let us see the example. Indian pipe plant earlier was photosynthetic due to presence of chlorophyll. But kids, during the course of evolution, it lost its chlorophyll and became saprophytic. We know the modes of nutrition, right? Saprophytic mode of nutrition से adapt किया. This variation बच्चा, they brought out this change in themselves in the mode of nutrition and thus it helped them to survive till date. Wipe out नहीं हुए. In fact, they brought a change, they brought a variation and they are surviving. Also example given, if we were a population of bacteria living in a temperate water and if the water temperature was increased by global warming, most of them would die. But a few variant resistant to heat. ऐसे बैक्टीरिया जो हीट को सर्वाइव कर सकते हैं, they can survive and also grow further, thus trying to keep their species intact bacha. So as I told you at the start, variation is thus useful for survival of species over a period of time. So this is an important of variation. After learning the introduction of this chapter, now let us move ahead kids and learn about the modes of reproduction. Something that you have studied in a lower standard. Yes kids, there are going to be two modes of reproduction. You have asexual mode of reproduction and sexual mode of reproduction. Let us see the difference between them. First, talking about asexual mode of reproduction, only one parent is involved in this process, and jabki on the other side, sexual reproduction kids, two parents are going to be involved. In sexual reproduction, two parents are going to be involved. Asexual reproduction, simple and small organisms, simple जिनका body design काफ़ी simple है, and they are small organisms, for instance microorganisms बच्चा. Sexual reproduction, as I told you, two parents are going to be involved. Humans, dogs, elephants, birds, plant, or rather all the complex organisms are going to fall under this category. Sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. Kids, now we are going to learn about asexual reproduction. Yes, and what are the different modes of reproduction which are used by single organisms, single celled organisms, और सिर्फ एक ही parent होते हैं, वो कैसे reproduce करते हैं. I am going to enlist the entire processes and then one by one we'll deal with them. First, fission. We are going to learn about fragmentation, regeneration, budding, vegetative propagation, and then spore formation. Let us start with the first one, that is fission. बच्चा fission का मतलब होता है division. Remember this. Fission का मतलब होता है division. In fission, we are going to learn about binary fission. बच्चा, the first topic that we are going to learn is binary fission. मैं जब bicycle बोलती हूँ मतलब उसमें दो टायर रहेंगे. Yes, so bi stands for two. Remember it that way बच्चा. Bi का मतलब two and fission is division, as I already told you. Binary fission. मैम what is this binary fission? Simple बच्चा, जब एक organisms दो cells में divide होते हैं. A living cell divides into two equal और nearly equal part. एक के दो होते हैं, ऐसे याद रखना है, एक के दो होते हैं. The living cells divide into two equal or nearly equal parts. Where is it seen बच्चा? In which organism? Most of the prokaryotes like bacteria, simple cell living material होता है उनके पास. Prokaryotes like bacteria. Some of the protozoa, amoeba and all fall under this category. Some of the protozoa. For example, as I told you, amoeba. In amoeba kids, binary fission मतलब organism एक के दो जब होते हैं ना, it could happen in any plane. Ma'am, why so? Because they have irregular shape people. Amoeba has an irregular shape. It could divide in this plane or the other way round, or in a vertical manner or a horizontal manner, any plane. Hence, it is called as a simple binary fission when division is happening through any plane. Next kids, in case of paramecium, binary fission occurs through a transverse section. Horizontal, बचपन में हम sleeping line पढ़ते थे, right? So this section. Paramecium जब divide होते हैं, the division takes place through an horizontal section. Just see. That is why this is called as transverse binary fission. Paramecium is going to perform transverse binary fission. Next kids, if we learn about Euglena or Leishmania. In case of Euglena or Leishmania, binary fission is going to occur through a longitudinal, vertical, या जिसको हम standing line बोलते हैं, in that section, and that is why this is called as longitudinal binary fission. So there are three types you should know of: simple, transverse and longitudinal. Okay, good people. Now kids, अगर बाइनरी फिजन है मतलब ऑर्गेनिज्म एक के दो हो रहे हैं तो मल्टीपल फिजन भी है. मल्टीपल का मतलब मैनी एंड फिजन इज डिविजन. दिस इज सीन इन प्लाज्मोडियम एंड ऑल्सो अमीबा. मैम अमीबा तो हमने बाइनरी में पढ़ा था. अंडरस्टैंड दिस किड्स. मल्टीपल फिजन अकर्स ड्यूरिंग अनफेवरेबल कंडीशन. टेम्परेचर इज नॉट प्रॉपर, शॉर्टेज ऑफ फूड और वाटर, ऐसे अनफेवरेबल कंडीशंस में होता है. अगर ऐसा हुआ अमीबा बिकम्स ऑलमोस्ट राउंड. इरेग्युलर जो होता है ऑलमोस्ट राउंड हो जाता है and it secretes a hard covering around itself which is called as cyst. The hard covering is called as cyst. Inside this बच्चा the nucleus, एक ही nucleus है, divides into many nuclei. Nuclei is the plural form, followed by division of cytoplasm. As a result you can see many daughter cells are formed inside this cyst. अब बच्चा ये cyst लाइफ लॉन्ग तो पूरा ऐसा अंदर तो रहेगा नहीं. तो what happens is whenever the conditions become favorable, the cyst is going to burst open, releasing all the daughter cells. So this is multiple fission done in unfavorable conditions. This is only their act to protect their species. Now let us learn about your next mode of reproduction. Please remember we are still dealing with asexual mode of reproduction. अब हम पढ़ने वाले हैं about budding. Kids, this process of budding is in unicellular organism. Yes, this process of budding is seen in unicellular organism like yeast. Yeast is a fungus, as we all know that. What happens is a small outgrowth, as you can see, a small outgrowth is formed on the parental cell. The later part, the nucleus of the parent cell is going to divide. Just see. The nucleus is going to divide and one of the daughter nuclei migrates into the bud. दो न्यूक्लिया होते हैं, उसमें से एक जो होता है बड के अंदर चला जाता है. ये जो आउटग्रोथ होता है that is going to migrate or enter into the bud. The bud increases in size. It is going to remain with the parent cell for some time to get the nutrition. Once it has become proper or able to survive on its own, it is going to detach itself. Just see, the bird separates and it grows further. So this is the process of budding which is seen in yeast. अगर पूछा गया process of budding in unicellular, we have to write down this method. Okay kids, after budding we are now going to learn about fragmentation. This is your next mode of asexual reproduction. If I give you a thread and if I ask you to break it into fragments, what are you going to do? You are going to break it into pieces. Come on, yes or no? The same thing happens here. The act or process of breaking it into fragment or piece, and hence the name of the process is fragmentation. This is seen in multicellular organism, but they have a very simple body design. For instance, you have Spirogara and Eulothrix. They are going to perform fragmentation. What happens is, when the organism is going to mature, it is going to split itself. It is going to break into fragments, and thus each fragment is going to represent as a new individual. Process of fragmentation. And then this new individual, when they mature, they are going to split, और ऐसे करते करते बच्चा उनका population बढ़ते जाता है. So we learned about binary fission, we learned about multiple fission, we learned about budding, we learned about fragmentation. We learned about budding in unicellular organisms. Yes kids, now we are going to learn about the process of budding in multicellular organism. As you can rightly see that organism is hydra. Yes, budding in multicellular is seen in hydra. किड्स हाइड्रा के पास होते हैं regenerative cells. Due to repeated cell division happening at one specific site, just see, यहाँ के cell reproduce, divide करते ही रहते हैं बच्चा. You can see that an outgrowth is formed. As you can see, an outgrowth is formed and this outgrowth is called as bud. Due to repeated cell division at one specific site, there is an outgrowth and this outgrowth is called as bud. The bud develops into tiny individual. When fully mature, they detach from the parent body. वो वाले budding process में भी हमने यही देखा था, right? They are going to remain with their parent body for some time till the time they get the nutrition, and once they are going to be fully mature, they detach. Detach is nothing but separate themselves and thus become a new independent individual. So this is budding in multicellular seen in Hydra. Your next process is vegetative propagation. Kids, this is in plants. Plants के पास होते हैं vegetative organs such as roots, stems, leaf. Ma'am, what is vegetative? But from these organs a new plant can come up. Yes, that is vegetative. From these plants, say like roots है, stems है, leaves है, इससे दूसरे plants आ सकते हैं, इसके लिए उसको vegetative organs बोलते हैं. As I told you, they have the ability to develop into new plants or produce new plants. For instance, you have bryophyllum. Bryophyllum के ऐसे notches होते हैं margins के ऊपर, as you can see. There are going to be leaf margins. Kids, अगर ये bird आपने आगे जाके उसको soil में डाला, they are going to develop into a new plant. So example of vegetative propagation, bryophyllum है हमारे पास. This property of vegetative propagation is used in methods like layering and grafting, and because of this many plants like sugarcane, roses or grapes are used for agricultural purposes. Just see, layering and grafting, हमको पता है stem से वापस new plant आने का ability है, so they use it. What is the advantages of vegetative propagation? Firstly, plants can bear flowers and fruit earlier that are those produced from the seed. So basically ये वाला process जो है, it is faster compared when they are produced from seeds. Also, used to propagate plants which have lost their ability to produce seeds. Banana, orange, rose, jasmine, they have lost their ability to produce seeds, but with the help of vegetative propagation we can grow them. Plants produced are genetically similar to the parent cell and thus have all the desired characteristic. वही stem, वही root, वही leaf से बाद में वापस they are trying to bring up a new plant, right? So they are going to be genetically similar and thus they are going to have all its characteristic. So this was about vegetative propagation. Kids, now we are going to learn about the last process or last method used for asexual reproduction, that is spore formation. Interesting process, let us see. Kids, spore formation it is seen in bread mold, जिसको हम rhizopus भी बोलते हैं. Now if you see the zoom out structure, thread like structures होते हैं, they are thin delicate thread like structures, and यहाँ पे these are called as hyphae. These are called as hyphae. On the hyphae, can you see that round color thing? Yes. On the hyphae there are blobs. On the hyphae there are blobs. The round structure that you can see, hyphae के ऊपर होते हैं blobs. Blobs are also called as sporangia. Blobs are nothing but sporangia. which is sporangia के अंदर होते हैं spores, tiny दाने दाने जैसे structure, very microscopic structure, they are called as spores. So there is blobs, blobs is having a round circular structure sporangia, sporangia के अंदर होते हैं spores. Now what happens is these spores are covered with thick wall that is going to protect them. These spores are eventually going to develop into new individual. Wherever they find a moist and a warm place, they are going to germinate there. Germinate is nothing but grow, and thus new colonies and new individuals बनते ही जाते हैं. So spore से species maintain करते हैं. That is why it is called as spore formation. Now, the next new interesting topic that we are going to learn is plant tissue culture. What is this? Chalo, let us see. A new plant that grows by removing tissue or separating cells from the growing tip of the plant. We have learned in a lower standard कि tip of the plant में एक special type of tissues होता है called as meristematic tissue. Yes, they have the ability to divide बच्चा meristematic tissues. Cells are placed in an artificial medium. Plant के tip से they are going to take meristematic tissue, उसको एक artificial medium which is called as nutrient agar उसमें place करते हैं. Now kids, because of the nutrient provided, they are going to divide rapidly and forms a small group of cell. This group of cell is called as callus. That is undifferentiated tissue. It's just group of cells so far. Later kids, this callus is transformed to another medium containing hormones. Plant hormones हमने पढ़े हैं, such as auxins, gibberellins, etc. Why? For growth and differentiation. These plants, अभी पूरा टाइम तो हम उनको ये टेस्ट ट्यूब में रख नहीं सकते. They are placed into the soil and they are then going to later grow into mature and big plants. Using tissue culture बच्चा, many plants can be grown by using just one parent and also in a nice disease free condition. Laboratory conditions में करते हैं ये चीज़. This technique is commonly used for ornamental plants, plants which is used for decorative purposes. So these are called as ornamental plants जिनके लिए tissue culture is used for on a large scale. So the technique of tissue culture is commonly used for ornamental plants. Kids, with this हमारा asexual reproduction part of the chapter concludes here. I hope this was really useful. Thank you kids so much. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel Tutoratti and also hit the bell icon so that you keep updated yourself with all the upcoming and informative videos. Thank you again.